Talking about some of the upcoming schedule, aside from the state and qualifying for state tournaments, which events are the biggest for your team to gauge how your guys compete with the state's best?
Well, obviously, Brecksville is a tournament that I think for every team that's in it, there's about 48 teams in the tournament. It's nothing to go up there and your weight class have 3 returning state champions, a state runner-up, and probably some state placers that don't even get seeded. Now, what they changed the seeding criteria now. Anybody that's a state placer is going to be seeded even if they have to seed out to 12. So that's a good thing. But if you're a placer in that tournament, your ability to be in Columbus the first weekend in March is very good.
Yeah.
And being in the top 8 is very good. I mean, that's a gauge.
And after Brecksville, what do you think is the most important event after that one?
I think CIT, because it's the Catholic schools. Obviously, St. Ed's doesn't wrestle in that thing anymore, neither does Walsh. But it's still a tough tournament. Chanel's there. They're one of the top D3 schools in the state. And they bring in some kids who are returning state runners-up, state champions, state placers. So, in Paddlewood the same way in D2. So it's a tough tournament. Delaware Hayes, believe it or not, is a tournament that we end our season with, our regular season. And when I first got in that tournament, I get in it for the 5 matches, just for the experience for some of our kids who were struggling during the season. I wanted to see them get mat time prior to going to postseason. But that tournament's turned out to be, Maslin Perry's in it. Wadsworth has been in it in the past.
Yeah.
There's some tough teams up there and some tough kids, and our kids get tested very, very good, very well before the start of the postseason.
And on the dual side, obviously the Moeller duel will be as big as it is every year. But which duel and tri-meets are you most looking forward to?
Well, we always look forward to the Oak Hills duel. It's never been, maybe it's not what it used to be back in the 70s and the 80s and the heydays of, Oak Hills wrestling. But Oak Hills wrestling is still our, it's our rival, our neighborhood rival. And, it's always a big match. It's always a lot of fun. And, and really honestly, 2 years ago, we went to their gym and they beat us. And that's something we weren't expecting. And, it still hurts. But it just goes to show you that records don't mean anything if you don't show up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That's a big one for us. St. X is always a big one, but St. X has dropped off the last year or two.
Yeah.
And it's not as a big expectation.
Okay. A few years back, you began scheduling tougher tournaments like Brecksville, as you just described. How do you think this tougher scheduling has impacted the program, and how do you intend to schedule things moving forward? Harder or perhaps easier?
Well, Dan, I'll be the first to tell you that I was kind of I shied away from some of those things because I worried about the kids that maybe couldn't compete at that level. But it was a huge mistake, coaching mistake on my part. If I would have changed our schedule back in the 90s and done this back in the 90s, I truly believe that our 96 team, our 98 team and our 95 team and 94 team would have been so much better. Those kids, we had great kids on that team. We had state placers on that team, and they just weren't. They weren't tested
maybe as much as they needed to be.
Correct. And when we got to the state tournament, everyone was still in awe of being there.
Right.
Now when we show up at the state tournament, it's just another tournament because all the teams we compete against,
right.
And what I missed out on the last question, the state duels we've been in for the last 2 or 3 years. We wrestle St. Ed's, we wrestle Wadsworth head-to-head, we wrestle Maslin Perry head-to-head, and those kids come to the state tournament knowing that I've competed against this guy before.
Right.
It's not so much a, wow, he's so good.
Right.
It's now, how do I figure out how to beat him?
Yeah.
So, it's changed the mindset of our team. It's changed the mindset of coaching. Do I make the schedule tougher? I don't know that I could make it much tougher, to be honest with you. Now, I could probably do like Moeller does and go out and travel.
Yeah.
But financially, that's tough to do, and I don't know that Elder would allow too much of that. 2, I think sometimes you beat kids up, and even though Moeller's had success, I've seen kids in their lineup fall off at the end of the year because I think the weight cutting, and it's a grind, and it's just, and they're beat up, and they just can't keep that mental toughness going. And I truly believe our schedule. Like I said, we start out, with our dual meet tournament, We wrestle our rival Oak Hills. We do our local tournament. But then Brecksville makes it tough. We do the state dual meet. We lighten up a little bit. Then we come back at the end of the month and wrestle Moeller, and we go to Delaware Hayes. And I think our kids mentally are ready to wrestle in the postseason, and that's been the difference.
Yeah, great. Most elder wrestling fans have really little idea about up-and-coming wrestlers at JV and freshman level, as well as promising incoming kids. Tell us about a few of these kids that you've noticed that appear to have what it takes to compete at Division I high school wrestling.
Well, I'll start with a couple of our incoming freshmen. We got some kids at the freshman level. I think that, with time, will be very good and produce very well at the varsity level. I named Shane Smith earlier. Jonathan Baggett is another kid that's coming in as an incoming freshman. Evan Morgan. All three of those kids have wrestled postseason. They've wrestled in the summer. They've paid their dues. I think those are kids I think that you're going to look at and say in 2 years from now they're going to be in our lineup. You're going to say, wow, where'd he come from? Mm-hmm. You heard it first right here. Okay. Now, as far as the junior high goes, we have a couple kids down there. I don't want to throw names out because, I think if I do that, then them kids are thinking I'm expecting them to be what they should be, and I just want them to enjoy the sport and have fun.
Sure. Okay. Last year's team was full of stars and hard workers. Talk about some of the guys that have moved on and what their example can show this year's team about what it means to be a great wrestler at Elder High School.
Well, I think when you looked at our team last year, it was a great mix of kids like, what I talked about, Ian Korb. Ian does all the things he has to do to be successful in wrestling. And it helps that he's a great athlete. But then you look at kids like Ian Gillespie, who's now wrestling at Heidelberg. He's going to be probably their one or two man at 141 pounds. Ian wasn't the most gifted athlete on our team, but he was a hard worker, and he was what I would call a gamer. Mm-hmm. When it was match time, you had to beat him. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't wrestle for 6 hard minutes, that was going to happen to you. And then you got a kid like Ryan Ruffing. Ryan Ruffing, once again, not the greatest athlete in the world, maybe not the greatest technician, but from mental toughness standpoint, probably one of the toughest kids, if that even makes any sense, on our team. Because he was not going to be denied having a place on that podium last year. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody knows this, but he started the season with a concussion and sat out for the first 5 weeks of the season and very much hated it. And he had to be coached to be calm and relax and not worry about it. It was how you ended, not how you started. And, when he got to the state tournament, he wasn't going to be denied. And he honestly beat 2 kids that I really didn't think he was better than. He just wanted it more than they did. The kid from St. Ed's that he pinned, and another kid I think the kid was from Solon. I'm not really sure on the school. But both those kids I thought were better wrestlers than Ryan, but they didn't want it more than he did when he got there. And once again, you look at Ian Korb, you see the athleticism, you see the talent. But then you look at Ian Gillespie, who's just a gamer. Then you look at a Ryan Ruffing, who was just a mentally tough kid that wasn't going to be denied. And he's a kid that he's a true elder kid. He's blue collar all the way. We have a kid like Sam Connors. Sam's now wrestling down at Campbellsville along with Tommy Pretty. And he didn't crack the lineup yet, but I think eventually he will. He has to make that adjustment at the collegiate level. But Sam was a kid that, he started his freshman year out just okay. He was a little better than average. But as time rolled by, he got better. And he took on the leadership role he had last year as a captain, and he made a huge turnaround now.
And he won some matches that he had no business winning.
Oh, exactly. And another kid that went to the state tournament not to be denied.
Right.
He was going to be on the podium no matter what it took, and that's how he wrestled every single match up there. And he did a great job. Those are guys that wrestled last year. We have a couple kids, Tommy Pretty and Orlando Scales. Orlando just come off a win in the Buffalo Open. A big D1 tournament, and he won the tournament at heavyweight this past weekend. So Tommy also going to be a great kid, returning national champion. Those guys are successful after high school wrestling. So it's done a lot for our program. It's done a lot for the kids in our program on what they should expect.
Right.